Hello and welcome to the Leading People podcast. I'm Meeta Sani and I'm really pleased to be joined today by Lee Milligan. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Meeta. Thanks for having me.
Really good to have you on board. So I'm going to introduce you first before we dig in. So Lee is the Chief Executive at Mental Health Research MQ. And Lee, before we get into the nitty gritty, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about MQ and what your role is there as Chief Exec.
Yeah, so MQ is the largest mental health research charity in the UK. We've only been around for about 8 years or so. We were founded by the Wellcome Trust, who recognised a space in the charity sector for a mental health research organisation that was connecting the scientists with the people, if you like.
Yeah.
And so sort of 8 years on, we've invested somewhere in the region of £22 million into the project, into various different angles of research. And I've been at MQ now as the CEO for, I think, 8 months. But when you've gone through 3 lockdowns, it's maybe 10 years. I can't be sure which.
Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it? And I think you're one of those probably in company who haven't actually spent a lot of time with your people, but have still managed to get under the skin of the organization and connect.
Yeah, I think I'm part of a small fraternity that changed jobs in the middle of lockdown 1. So yeah. I led a team into lockdown, finished my job there, and joined a team in lockdown. I'm yet to face meet a single trustee. I've met, I think, 2 members of staff when I went into the office for 1 day that I managed to get in, but the rest has all been completely remote. So yeah, it's a unique experience.
Well, Lou, you have done fantastic work over at MQ, and you've been kind enough to invite me into the network and be part of the corporate development network as well. And just seeing what you're doing and what, we've worked with MQ in terms of bringing the right people in to help the journey and the plan for the organization. But the fact that you connected research and created actual fact-based solutions and data-based solutions to the mental health challenge that is out there is just fantastic. And what made you choose this role? What made you come on board?
I suppose my career journey through the sort of the golden thread through all the different roles I've taken throughout my career has had mental health at the center of it, I suppose, and the opportunity to join such an entrepreneurial and young charity doesn't come along often, and to be able to be at the very center of the conversation, the cutting edge of what we know about mental health was a huge draw for me. And MQ is an organization that in a very short space of time has had a huge amount of impact. And so being able to be part of that story and that journey is something that's hugely exciting.
And would you say that you are a commercially driven charity? Because you get organizations, we at the Main World have our not-for-profit practice and our commercial practice, and I think they learn from each other, and we can help organizations on each side learn from each other. I mean, how would you say that you've been able to achieve that success?
Yeah, I mean, I actually hate the word charity completely, if I'm really honest. I think it conjures images of Victorian giveaways and handouts, and I used to work in the Christian charity sector, and we used to say that a lot of people wanted to offer junk for Jesus. A lot of the times they would just take their old tat and hand it over to the charity and go, there, that'll be great, you can use that. And so for me, being a CEO of a charity is no different to being the CEO of any business, of any venture. You've got a vision, you've got something that you want to do to change the world, to change the experience of your customers. For us, that's those that have experienced mental illness. And the way that we have to do that is to take products to market. We have to take the concept of research and help people understand why they should put money into it. And the bigger challenge you've got in the not-for-profit sector is the benefit might not necessarily be to you. So will you give your money to benefit someone else on the way through? And maybe it will benefit you as well. So it's for me, you've got to understand what your bottom lines are. You've got to understand what it is you're actually putting to market, and you've got to understand whether or not you're having any impact or not. Otherwise, I think some charities should just shut down if they're not getting those things right.
Yeah, and you see the range of charities that do run themselves so efficiently that they are able to get so much more return on every pound of donation. And just seeing that with MQ just going from strength to strength is fantastic. So congratulations, and I look forward to seeing how that story evolves in the coming weeks and months. So where did it all start for you, Lee? Like, you know, for CEOs, we look at CEOs out there and we imagine this, you know, untouchable person who's done everything perfectly throughout their career. And part of this podcast series has been about really bringing to life the reality of a CEO's life journey and hopefully helping other people, either a peer group or people who aspire, to see that it can be quite normal. Everyone's normal is individual, but a journey that anyone can embark on.
Yeah, so I think to your point of, you know, what is the archetypal CEO or whatever, if I kind of frame what I think it is I am within that archetype, and then my journey might make a bit of sense. I think it's Simon Sinek talks about this idea that, you know, not everyone's a visionary. Maybe 5% of the population are visionaries. We can all we can all work to a vision, and we can all have a vision, but we're not necessarily visionaries. I'm definitely not a visionary. That I am not in that category at all. So let's write that bit of the archetype off straight away. I always in my career saw myself as being able to serve a vision well and help bring it to reality. And I think that's kind of the bit of the CEO role that I've always aspired to try and achieve, and had never really aspired to be a CEO, whatever that is, at all. Well, really.
You, like, did you see yourself as someone that was always going to be a leader and someone who inspired others to go on that journey with you?
Yeah, what's the greatest title I was hoping to aspire to? You know, a COO or a chief of staff in the American sort of West Wing style, or whatever. Like those kinds of functions where somebody who's got this fantastic vision of the future and just needs somebody to hammer out for them. That was kind of the version of it that I sort of envisaged or moved towards, and I've quickly realized that you can do that job as the title of CEO just the same. I like to push boundaries, and I like to find where the limits are. I joked for a while, and I think the balance is coming back round, where I used to say I've had more jobs where I've had disciplinaries than jobs where I haven't had disciplinaries. I think I'm starting to balance now. I've learned where the lines are a little bit more. But for me, I suppose,
really interesting.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say that's interesting because, again, if you think about somebody who is in a leadership position, one would imagine that they have, you know, followed the perfect path and they've been at the right place to get all the promotion. And sounds like you've created your own unique style of promotion and success.
Yeah, I tended to very early on, and even today, I suppose my chairman might say this is still true. I tend to ask for forgiveness rather than permission a lot of the time. Hopefully that's a positive. I suppose for me, the earliest memory I can think of in a leadership context was about the age of 16, 17. And there was this big event about to happen in our city. I grew up in Derry, Londonderry in Northern Ireland. So about 250,000 population. And there was this big event where this huge organization were coming to the city, and they wanted to run a whole series of citywide events, and they wanted this big strand of youth activity to go on. And one of the local leaders came to me, like I knew him from a distance, and he said to me, "Lee, I'd love you to pull together a committee of young people. We'll give you a budget of £10,000 to run a week's worth of activities for the whole youth of the city. Here's what we're going to achieve. You up for it?" And I was kind of like, yeah, sure. Who's in charge? He's like, "There's a big steering committee doing the rest of the city, but I just want young people to do the young people bits. So we'll give you a budget and you'll just go do it, and you'll report to me."
You're in charge.
Yeah, and I was kind of going, I mean, what has my CV got? I worked at Clark's Shoes, fitting kids' shoes was my first, like, and the job before that was washing dishes. So, you know, what's this? And there was a seminal moment where I pulled together this group of kids from the city to decide what we wanted to do, and we were presenting it back to this big adult steering committee of business leaders and city leaders, and they hated it. They absolutely hated it. And they were all saying, "We're pulling the money out. This is a joke, blah, blah, blah." And this one guy, Andy, who'd approached me, turned to the group and just said, "Look, we asked the young people to plan it and deliver it. This is what they think will work for young people. We're not them. The choice is, don't fund it, and I'll find a way to fund it for them, or fund it and they're doing it. It's up to you. I picked the team. Lee picked his team. I'm backing him. So what do you want to do?" And they all left. They took their money with them. And I was like, Andy, why have you put the nuclear option down? And he said, I believe you've made the right call. So I don't know where he found the money for it, but he gave us the budget and we delivered it, and we engaged something like 6,000 young people in the city across a week, which is like 30% of the young people in the city came to these events that we ran, and we hit all these targets. And he was like, I made the right call. And so for me, it really shaped this idea that really good leadership is about picking the right people, backing the right idea, and then just getting out the way and making it happen. And so whether I've been a COO or a CEO or whatever function I've played, ultimately it's boiled down to just that. Take some risks, take some gambles, pick the right people, and just get out of their way as often as you can.
Yeah. And you mentioned Simon Sinek right at the start about not everyone is a visionary, but he talks a lot about defining your why, doesn't he? And I suppose with that example, your why was about engaging youth. And that day or that week touched 30,000 kids, where they probably took some of that into their life and into their future, but it definitely shaped yours.
Exactly. And I think, as I say, there's other examples of people throughout my career where I've been borderlining those disciplinaries and borderline the mistakes and getting it wrong. They've kind of, they've wrapped my knuckles, but they've also said that was a good gamble. It didn't work that time. Don't stop taking the gambles to push the boundaries, and they kept back at me and let me keep going, you know what I mean?
So you have to be quite brave as a leader then, I think, is what you're saying.
I think so. I think if you've got a vision you want to achieve, if you want to see something happen, you've got to be, the person that takes that next step. I remember a talk by a CEO, again, when I was maybe about 2021, he was my CEO when I was a junior. And he said, you only need two people to make an idea reality. One person needs to say, what if? And the other person needs to say, sure, okay. And so for a number of years, I was the sure, okay guy. And I went, let's see what we can do. And slowly over time, I suppose I've moved into the chair of the what if. But I love it the most when my team come and say, what if? And I go, sure, okay, let's try that one. Let's give that one a crack.
So you've actually created visionaries around you. You say you're not a visionary. Well, chances are you've become a visionary by design, by practice of having that way of thinking, but you've also facilitated and enabled your people around you to bring this up, because we're not islands, are we, as CEOs? People think almost like they're untouchable and, they have all the answers, and it's not the case at all, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, you're absolutely nothing without a team around you. I spent 18 months I set up my own little company as a consultant by myself to do some consultancy work between two roles, and I absolutely hated every second of it. That was not my gig at all. And so the team around me is the thing that makes stuff happen, and they're the ones that recognize that they've achieved, and I back them. I'm a big believer in understanding what your strengths are, and there's loads of different models, Myers-Briggs and all those sorts of things, and I've sort of leaned into strength finders, Clifton strength finders. And one of the strengths it outlines in my little portfolio is self-assurance. But interestingly, it's not just you're cocky, you think you can do everything. It talks about your confidence in a concept, or your confidence in an idea or another person means that you facilitate them to get on and do the things. So I really see my role as giving confidence to people who are, will this idea work? What? Yeah, it will. Here's how we'll get there. Let's do this. Let's do that. We'll put money behind it. We'll put people behind it. We'll pull it together.
We'll believe in ourselves and we'll get there together. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess by knowing what your strengths are, and as you said, we aren't good at everything as leaders, despite what's expected. We're actually the sum total of everyone that's in our group. How and when did you start to own your weaknesses or challenges, whatever you call them? Because that is a really big developmental moment, isn't it, in anyone's career, and especially a leader's career, is being able to own failure and know that it is not the end point, but just part of the journey towards success. And actually, when we stop trying to put energy into what we're not good at, and we bring people in that are even better than us at that, it frees us up to do more in that space. So what was there a moment of failure, or was, when did you own that space?
Yeah, I think, what you're describing is just spot on, that there's the more that you fail, the more that you're trying, the more that you're going to ultimately achieve, and the more that you're happy and secure to just bring in people. I've not always said, what I now say is the dream team is a team of people whose jobs I can't do. That's the dream, you know what I mean, of experts around me that are just flagging it up and I'm going, yep, all that adds up. That's a great call. A specific moment, I remember when I was in a role, probably about 5 years I spent working in young offenders institutes and with female offenders and in the secure estate. And that role was a really challenging job to be managing. Like, I'd started out as a teacher in one of the prisons. I had, by picking up some work I really shouldn't have been bothering to do myself, I won us some funding, and that funding multiplied, and suddenly we had to roll out this project into 20 prisons across the country. And the CEO was like, "What have you done? We can't expand this quick. What have you done?" And I went, "Well, it looked really good on paper." And he said, "Okay, then you're now in charge of that rollout. That's your new job, is just rolling out that plan you wrote, because the money's there. I'm going to give you the team to do it. It was your idea. You got to lead it." And I think it was in that phase of him backing me that I really started to recognize, you know, I can't roll this out myself. It was an idea on paper. I can't fight a paper army here. It's real. What am I going to do? And so I think that's probably that little chapter of my life is probably where I owned it the most. And it was the job after that I picked up my first COO title, where I was sort of starting to oversee operations after that. And that was a big learning curve moment for me.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, you know, these pivotal moments that shape the direction of your career, it's really helpful for you to share that, because I think so many who would be watching or resonating and losing confidence can actually see that was your stepping stone into that first chief position.
Yeah, and it was probably from that moment onwards, like once I moved away from that leader or stopped working for them directly, it was at that point that I worked really hard to make sure I was bringing mentors in constantly to every role I had. So as well as leadership structure I was in, making sure that I had external people from the organization just talking to me, chatting to me. I was, again, really fortunate to get the ex-director of Royal Mail to mentor me for a couple of years, and he was, I mean, you'd bring a problem, you'd be like, you know, "Oh, I've got this issue with these 4 members of staff in this team, and the budget is down by, you know, £50,000, and without any sense of grandeur, he would say, "Oh yeah, you know, that's similar to when we were at Royal Mail and we were down by 100 million, and we had union negotiations with 15,000 staff," and I'm like, my problem doesn't sound that bad anymore. Actually, I think you made a good point. But the big lesson I remember taking away from him was he always had this concept of the bank of trust. He always talked about this idea that you have a bank of trust with your staff team, and every day that you try and put in a penny, and that will be, you know, flexible working policies that you introduce, or staff team meetings or whatever. They said, but some days you're going to have to make a withdrawal. The problem is you can only put in pennies, and you can only withdraw £100 at a time. When you restructure, when you make redundancy, when you do something radical, you take a massive check out and you go straight back into the red. And so as a leader, work out how you get into the black with your team and how you build trust and confidence and keep that bank growing, because as a leader, you've got to make those tough calls some days. So that's a lesson I took from him.
I love that. That is really powerful. And I understand the concept of the trust and confidence, but I'd never aligned the two, that you build that trust. And sometimes you do have to make difficult decisions.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to take that away and hold on to that. So thank you.
I think the bit that really got me about it was this the disparity of the impact. You think you're doing loads to build trust, but it's teeny tiny things you're doing in reality is the impact. But when you have to do the tough things, they have huge, massive impact. Like I'm 36 years old. I consider myself an elder millennial. Like, I remember what a modem was, but in a sense, I still get to tick under 40. But in that time, I've been involved in over 100 redundancies and tough decisions like that, and that's a lot in that space of time, and that's a lot of people's lives you've had to really be invested and engaged in and try to work through and support, and that disproportionate impact piece is huge.
It's amazing that you're 38, because you look great. It's not the look.
It's all right. I look 20 years older. It's okay. It's
no, you look young
lockdown.
and you look energized. It's not that. It's just you've done so much, and that's amazing. I would never have made you so young. And so, gosh, I mean, not only have you achieved the pinnacle, but you've also done it really early on in your career. I mean, so, and remind me how old you were when you did that, the youth week, about 16, 17, you
16,
said.
17, yeah. I was just about to start my A-levels, I think, something like that. So 16, 17.
So in 20 years, and way before, because you've been in a chief role for a long time.
Yeah. I think, like I say, I've worked best when I find people that are willing to take a risk. And I remember in my last role, which was my first CEO role, I remember at the end of the interview process thinking I could really work with that chair, and I think would work really well. And they came back to me and said, "You are the absolute wild card choice for this job, but we want you to know that we back you 100%. So we're putting you at the top of the scale we advertised it at, because we don't want you to think we're cheaping out on you. So are you okay with that?" And I was going, "What? I'm the wild card, and yet you're okay."
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, but for me, it wasn't that the check was right. I would have gone in for under what the low band was, to be honest, because it was such an exciting opportunity. But it was that recognition from the board that they were saying, "We're taking a gamble, but we want to show you back you." And if you've got that, you can achieve anything, you know?
Well, I think you need to write a book called The Rebel CEO, because is that you absolutely have gained traction in your career, and the value you've given back by always questioning, as you said, pushing the boundaries, but always being a little controversial.
The title might be the Not Yet Sacked CEO. To be honest, I haven't hit the pinnacle yet. I haven't pushed the boundary so far.
No, well, I think I think it for somebody who, I don't think I've taken the safe journey, but I went to university, I did a degree, I became an accountant, I bought the business I work for, I deliver value through my passion and through adding value out to organizations. But I definitely feel that I work within the safety lines, if you like, of what's right. And I think so much comes from your childhood, doesn't it? And what you watch and you learn from your parents, your siblings, people around you. Who were your young influences?
I mean, growing up in Northern Ireland was a really weird experience, and even to this day, when I talk to my English mates, I live in England now, they can't grasp some of the things that army Land Rovers drove down your street. That you could be walking along and suddenly a 2x2 cover formation of soldiers with SA-80 rifles would walk past you and give you a wave and keep on going, and you go, they're like, "What?" Like a bomb went off of the bottle on my street when I was walking home from a night out when I was 14, 15. So there's that weird bit, and I didn't grow up in the hard days in Northern Ireland, like in the 60s or whatever. I was growing up in the 90s. So it was just random sporadic stuff. So there's that kind of influence on your life of just a very a little bit of a chaotic world, like external world, but that became normalized. But it became normalized. So
it gave you the room, didn't it, to be that way a little bit?
Yeah, I think you feel safe in what you know, not because it is safe, but because you know it. Therefore, it feels safe. So, look, I'm not saying a bomb went off and I was like, "Oh, that's normal." It was like, "What has just happened?" But you grow up in a context that you then go, that level of sort of uncertainty, that's just normal. And so then you translate that to your work life, and certainty is the most dull thing I can imagine. Like the point at which I look at, is it time for me to take on the next challenge, next job, whatever, is the point at which I go, I mean, people just don't need, I'm not adding value. It's just all the same stuff week in, week out now. But that's okay. Like we all have those different roles to play, and I'm not the out and out sustainer. Like I'm not going to be in a job for 20 years. That's just not who I am. And
no, but also what you said about self-assurance, I can see where that comes from now, from those early year experiences. and it just goes to show, when we talk about, they say, show me the grown man, and they say, I'll show you the boy of 7. I know they use the male, but it can be male, female.
Sure.
It really is those early years. And as we said, what's normal for us, just because we have no other point of reference, but what we see with our own eyes for the first time, which we can only reflect on as we get older and see all the different ways of the world.
Yeah, exactly. I went to a grammar school in Northern Ireland, and the track that I was on was, you will go to university and you'll blah blah blah. And so all of my friends in my peer groups and stuff went into medicine, went into law, went into the accountancy, all the professions and stuff like that. I was part of a group that applied and got accepted to the Oxbridge sort of crew of school and whatever, and didn't go to university at all in the end. I went and played basketball in London with gangs as a volunteer for 3 years, and that led me into working in prison. And so my 3 years of university were living in a YMCA in London for a year, playing basketball with gangs. The second year, I was in a tour bus teaching football around the country in a different city every week, living in other people's homes. And the third year, I was in and out of prison working across the country. So that was my university experience. So again, it's not stability. It's not safe. It's not.
You almost crave the uncertainty that you put yourself in, because you grow and learn in that space.
Yeah, and it was at the end of those 3 years that then I took on the role that then got me to the point where I started to roll out the projects in other prisons and then move from there. And so those 3 years of being unpaid and working in the charity sector and learning what it looks like at the coalface, and really, some of the most extreme places I could try to work in the UK, taught me a lot in that sort of sense about who I was, I imagine.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. I'm blown away, Lee. I mean, I thought I knew you, and not I thought I knew of you, but that is really insightful, and I love that you've actually stayed so authentic to who you are, and actually you sustain that in yourself and the way you conduct yourself at work every day, and the way you add value. I think that's so powerful and good for anyone listening to know that the more in touch with your authentic self you are, and allow that skill to add value, the more powerful the impact of your role is.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the continual learning bit. I think that's the bit that I've tried to pick up on it, and I can think of every leader I've worked under, manager, senior manager, CEO, and I've constantly tried to go, that bit there I want to emulate, that bit there I definitely don't want to ever become.
I'll leave that there.
I'll drop that bit, and I'll not take that abuse with me and pass it on to somebody else, if you like. I'll park that and just own that over here. And so it's trying to keep that journey going. And now, instead of it being a CEO or a line manager that you're learning from, it's your board, and it's the people that you network with, and other CEOs and people like yourself, and just seeing the bits that you go, do you know what? I could take that bit and I could be a bit better at that, and that'll add a bit more to it. And that bit, we'd probably get rid of that bit because that's a bit too...
Not you. And I love that, and continually learning. And what you mentioned about mentors as well, our mentors grow as we grow, right? And as our stages of life change. I'm looking for a mentor right now, whereas I have one mentor for different areas, but now I'm looking at another growth in my own career, and how we add value out to the world. I feel like I want a mentor that's walked in those shoes, and and it's knowing that that's not a weakness. That's just we're not an island, as we said right at the start, right? We need those people around us.
Exactly, and I'm in constant debate. Do I need a mentor who's going to keep telling me, keep taking gambles, because I don't want to lose that edge that I've got, or do I need a mentor who's going to ask me to just question the gambles a little bit more and start to play safe? Because you never want to take a gamble where the debt at the end of it is worse than the payoff would have been. To put it in proper gambling terms, if you're going to take a gamble, it's got a big debt to it. It better have a great opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Returning calculated. So I think constantly keeping that check and balance. You've also got to recognize, as a CEO, you have to be the safe pair of hands on behalf of the board. You're responsible for the careers, the livelihoods of X number of people, and And in the job I'm now in, we've got a small team, but we're funding, 20 plus research projects around the world. Each research project has maybe between 5 and 15 people being paid through those research projects. If you play silly, then that's a lot of people's lives you're impacting. And the goal of moving mental health understanding forward is, so
not getting to the end user if this isn't kept safe, secure, and moving in the right direction. And within that, you're thinking about the risks you want to take to be able to push it forward.
Exactly. And I think that's the important bit to balance. And as I've sort of moved up the responsibility level, if you like, it's recognizing what a gamble looks like. So at my last job, the organization was kind of in 30% decline year on year. It had peaked and then petered quite a bit. In our first year as a charity, we made some tough cuts, but we went out and hit it hard in terms of fundraising, and we raised a huge amount of money. And there were two ways to play it. One would have been, hold that money back, keep it safe, let's look after it loads. The other was, it's working, so let's plow it straight back into growing. Because we know we've got this bit of reserve over here. If it goes wrong, we'll just be back to where we started. We're not going to go beyond that. And so you can only take that gamble if you know you've got this security back here. So it's, whereas the 16, 17-year-old version of myself, or the 26-year-old version instead of the 36-year-old version, probably would have gone, we're never, we don't need it. We'll work it out.
Who needs a safety net?
The 36-year-old version of me now is a bit more, let's build the safety net and the platform, and then when we see it's working, we go after it hard. But let's test and prove and then push, rather than just push wildly. So
you've kept the essence of who you are, but you've built some safety nets into it. So I think you're being your own mentor, and when you do get a mentor, you will tell them what you need from them, because that's the other thing, isn't it? It's knowing yourself, and it's knowing where you need. And of course, they're a mirror as well to you, where they might see things you don't see in yourself. But it's an exciting journey. And you know what? I would love to tie things up today by asking you about MQ and what the campaign you're doing with business leaders, the Business Leaders Forum and workplace mental health.
Yeah, so there's been this small global pandemic that you might have heard about. It's moved the workplace into our own homes, and it's shut down workplaces, all over the world. What we've been hearing from business leaders is a real passion to put the mental well-being, the mental health of their people first, for a whole raft of reasons, whether that be, retention, recruitment, recognition, helping the cause, whatever the rationale is. And we've also heard that business leaders actually have quite a bit of data. They've been asking their people how they are for a long time. But those two things don't know how to connect yet. How do we move what people are telling us to what we need to do? Like, how do we do that? You wouldn't make an investment into a stock unless you understood what the implications that could look like. And mental health is in the workplace is not fully understood. So what we're launching is a workplace mental health challenge fund. So we're bringing together a business leaders forum at the end of this month to really listen to what it is business leaders in the private sector need to help their people's mental health. And what we think we're going to be able to do is raise a fund that will commission data scientists to pool that data that they've got into a framework that will help them to understand, firstly, where their people are at, and secondly, what interventions they're delivering are actually making a difference, which ones are valuable. Should we be plowing £75,000 into an app for all our people, or yoga at lunchtime, or is it something more fundamental than that we need to do to our business to move it forward? And let's measure, let's before and after it, and let's really understand how we're doing it. So we're launching that this year, and we're starting that by really listening hard to a big group of business leaders to understand exactly what we can try and bring to the party.
God, that sounds essential. It sounds exciting, and it sounds like it's going to change the face of the way businesses take care of their people, retain their people, as you said. But I'll tell you now, the future for people looking for that next role, they'll be looking at an organization and questioning how they take care of their people's, not only careers, not only well-being, but their mental health as well. Because we put our all into our work. Whatever a role is in the organization, people give it their all. It's important to them. And they need to know that this is sustainable and the role is sustainable, and they can be safe in that space, and that's considered. So
yeah, definitely.
It's really powerful. Well, Lee, thank you so much for your time today and for your openness. And I always say, be as candid as you can to my guests, because ultimately everyone can give it the shop window version of what it is to be a CEO. But the fact is that it's so many different factors that bring together the success. And some are really great stories, some are the challenges, but you've brought it to life beautifully today. And I thank you. And I hope everyone watching today can take away some lessons that they can apply to their own world. And I really thank you so much. So Lee, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. Take care.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.